They looked at me the way people look at cracked glass, careful, gentle, almost afraid. And then my own daughter leaned toward my doctor and whispered, "She's getting worse." I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just went home, closed the door, and started recording everything. Because if they were going to say I was losing my mind, I was going to make sure the truth never could. Before I tell you how this all unfolded, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe, and maybe tell me where you're listening from. These stories aren't just stories to me. They're pieces of a life I've carried quietly for years, and it means more than you know to share them with someone who's really listening. I'm 68 years old. I still wake before the sun. My knees speak first, then my back. I sit on the edge of the bed for a moment and let the room settle around me. The house is quiet at that hour. Not lonely quiet, earned quiet. I shuffle into the kitchen, turn on the small lamp above the sink. I've never liked harsh morning light. It feels impatient. I make my coffee the same way I have for years. 2 scoops, boiling water, a pinch of cinnamon. My husband used to laugh at that. Said I treated coffee like medicine. Sometimes, I still take out 2 mugs. I don't always realize I've done it until I'm washing the second one. After breakfast, I water the plants. I speak to them softly. Not because I'm lonely, because living things deserve conversation. My daughter Rachel calls most afternoons. At least, she used to. She'd ask if I took my vitamins, if I locked the back door, if I remembered my appointment. At first, it felt sweet, protective. My son Daniel lives 20 minutes away. He handles the heavy things. Air filters, roof checks, carrying in groceries. I was grateful. I am grateful. I raised them mostly alone after their father died. 2 jobs, early mornings, late nights. There was one winter when the furnace failed. I remember wrapping Rachel in 3 blankets and telling her it was camping. I remember pretending not to be afraid. We survived that winter. We survived many things. And when the house finally grew quiet again, I thought the hard years were behind us. Sunday dinners, roast chicken, Daniel arguing about politics, Rachel correcting his facts. Laughter around this same table, or so I believed. The first moment something felt wrong was small, almost forgettable. Rachel corrected me in front of Daniel. "No, Mom," she said gently. "That was Tuesday, not Thursday. Remember?" I paused. I could picture the day clearly, the sweater I wore, the rain outside. But she said it with such calm certainty, and Daniel nodded so quickly. I let it go. It happened again a week later. I mentioned paying the water bill. Daniel said, "Mom, you forgot last month. I had to handle it." That struck deeper. I don't forget bills. I never have. Later that night, I checked my files. The receipt was there, stamped, dated, filed. I told myself it was confusion. Schedules blur, conversations overlap. But then Rachel began finishing my sentences. "You mean the blue folder, Mum? You told us that yesterday, remember?" She always smiled when she said it. Soft, concerned. One afternoon at the grocery store, she gripped my elbow. "Careful," she whispered. "You don't want to fall again." I hadn't fallen. But the cashier heard her, gave me that quiet, sympathetic look. That look stayed with me longer than it should have. At night, I began replaying conversations, checking dates twice, then 3 times. I started writing notes. Doctor, 10:30 Monday. Electric bill paid. Call Martha. Just to reassure myself. Daniel started stopping by unannounced. "Just checking in," he'd say, but his eyes would scan the counters, the mail stack, the medicine cabinet. Once, I found him opening my desk drawer. "Oh," he said quickly, "looking for insurance paperwork." I hadn't asked him to. Rachel mentioned a memory specialist, casually. Early screenings are smart, Mom. Smart. That word lingered in the air after she left. That night, the house felt different, like it was listening. I stood at the kitchen sink as the sun faded across the counter, watched my reflection in the window. I didn't look confused. I looked studied, measured. I thought about the years I spent keeping everything steady. Every birthday remembered, every emergency handled, every dollar accounted for. I had always been the anchor. And now, I was being examined like a loose thread. A quiet whisper formed inside me. Pay attention, because sometimes concern doesn't feel like love. Sometimes it feels like preparation. I didn't know it then, but that silence was the last true peace I would feel for a long time. The real shift came on a Tuesday afternoon. Rachel brought lemon muffins. Daniel brought a folder. They sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where I helped with math homework. The same table where I sewed Halloween costumes out of old curtains. Daniel cleared his throat. Mum, we're just worried. That word again. Rachel reached for my hand. Her palm was warm. Too warm. You've been repeating stories, she said softly. And forgetting little things. I held her gaze. I told you about the neighbor's dog twice, she added. Remember? I did remember. I told it twice, because Daniel wasn't there the first time, but I didn't interrupt. Daniel opened the folder. Inside were printed bank statements. Your savings dipped last month, he said. You transferred money twice. My stomach tightened. I paid the contractor, I said carefully. He needed 2 installments. Rachel tilted her head gently. No, Mom. That was paid in full. We checked. I folded my hands in my lap to keep them steady. I've handled my finances for 40 years, I said. Daniel leaned back in his chair. That's exactly why we're concerned. Concern, again. Rachel inhaled slowly. We spoke to Dr. Myers, just informally. The air shifted. You spoke to my doctor? I asked. Just to ask about early cognitive signs, she said quickly. You know, prevention. The room felt smaller. But that wasn't the worst part. Daniel slid a single sheet of paper toward me. Power of attorney. Just temporary, he said. Until things stabilize. My heart pounded once. Hard. I'm not unstable, I said evenly. Rachel's voice sharpened just slightly. You forgot your appointment last week. I rescheduled it. She looked at Daniel. See? That look said. Denial. I stood slowly. I don't need supervision. Daniel exhaled. Mom, please don't make this harder. Harder, like I was an obstacle. Rachel lowered her voice. If something happens, if you fall, or forget the stove, and we didn't step in. There it was, the narrative, the soft construction of incompetence. I sat back down. I'm not signing anything. Daniel's jaw tightened. Then we may have to petition. The word landed heavily. Petition. Rachel said it more clearly. For guardianship. Guardianship. As if I were already fading. I studied their faces. Why? I asked quietly. Rachel avoided the question. It's about safety, Daniel added, almost under his breath. And protecting the house. The house, not me. The house. I folded the paper carefully and placed it back on the table. I'm not confused, I said. Rachel's expression changed. You left the kettle on last month. I was in the kitchen. Daniel shook his head slowly. This is exactly what we mean. You don't remember clearly. I felt it then, not anger, something colder. They weren't testing my memory. They were rewriting it. Rachel moved toward the door. We'll give you time, she said gently. Daniel paused before leaving. You don't have to fight us, Mom. Fight. As if I had drawn a weapon. When the door closed, the house felt hollow. I didn't cry. I walked to my desk instead. Opened my filing cabinet. Every receipt was there. Every bill paid. Every date logged. I wasn't slipping. I was being cornered. That night, I sat at the kitchen table long after the light faded. Guardianship, petition, power of attorney. Each word echoed differently in the dark. I replayed the last 3 months in my mind. The corrections, the glances, the doctor's name mentioned casually, the bank statements printed before I ever saw them. This wasn't random, it was coordinated. If I protested loudly, I would sound unstable. If I cried, I would seem fragile. If I accused them, I would confirm their concern. So I did none of those things. Instead, I walked quietly to my bedroom, opened the drawer beside my bed, and took out my old digital recorder, the one I used for church meetings years ago. I set it on the nightstand, pressed the red button, watched the small light glow steady. Then I whispered into the still room. If they think I'm losing my mind, I'll let the truth speak for me. I didn't raise my voice, but something inside me went very, very quiet. And that's when I knew I would not stay silent. The next morning felt heavier, not dramatic, not loud, just heavier. I made my coffee. Same cinnamon, same soft lamp above the sink. But this time, I pressed record. The red light blinked once, then held steady. I didn't feel sneaky. I felt careful. Rachel called at 2:14 that afternoon. "Hi, Mom. Did you remember to take your blood pressure today?" "Yes," I said calmly. A pause. "You sound tired. I slept fine." Another pause. "You sure? You called me at midnight." I froze. "No, I didn't." "You did," she insisted gently. "You were confused about the calendar." I looked at my phone. No outgoing calls. I didn't argue. I let her finish. "Mom, sometimes memory loss starts like this." When she hung up, I replayed the recording. Her tone was soft, measured, practiced. I opened my notebook and wrote carefully. "Rachel, false claim about midnight call, 2:14 p.m. Small letters, straight lines, steady hand." That night, I walked down the hallway slowly, ran my fingers along the picture frames. Daniel at 8 years old, missing a tooth. Rachel in her prom dress, nervous and radiant. I remember saving for that dress, skipping new shoes for myself. Some nights, I caught myself whispering their names, not in anger, but in disbelief. When did this turn into a strategy? 2 days later, Daniel stopped by unannounced. Again. "I need to check the breaker panel," he said. He walked toward my office instead. The recorder sat inside my cardigan pocket. "I reorganized some paperwork," he said casually. He opened my desk drawer, shifted files, moved the bank folder. "Daniel," I said softly. He turned. "Have you been accessing my accounts?" His eyes flickered. "Just to make sure nothing's wrong. Without telling me. You've been forgetting things." Forgetting. That word had become a tool. I stepped closer. "I haven't forgotten a single bill." He sighed heavily. "Mom, this denial is exactly what scares us. Scares us." I let silence sit between us. He filled it. "You transferred money twice last month. For the contractor. You don't remember we discussed that?" My chest tightened. "We never discussed it." His tone lowered. "You see? That's what I mean. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply watched him." That night, I spread every bank statement across the dining table, line by line. Careful. There were 2 transfers, but they weren't to the contractor. They were to an unfamiliar account, small amounts, always just under reporting limits. My hands grew cold. I pulled older statements. There they were again. Tiny withdrawals. Over months. Quiet. Subtle. Deliberate. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being drained. And blamed for it. I leaned back in my chair. The refrigerator hummed softly in the kitchen. The house felt watchful. If they gained guardianship, they'd have full control. Accounts, property, everything. And they would call it protection. I didn't cry. Instead, I gathered the statements, placed them into a separate folder, labeled it carefully. Evidence. That word steadied me. Evidence means clarity. The following week, Rachel scheduled a cognitive evaluation. She didn't ask. She informed. Just for peace of mind. Peace of mind. I agreed. That surprised her. In the doctor's office, she spoke more than I did. She repeats herself. She misplaces things. She's paranoid about money. I answered every question clearly. Dates, sequences. Simple math. The doctor nodded. Rachel's smile tightened. Afterward, in the parking lot, she squeezed my arm. See? It's good to get ahead of these things. Ahead of what? I watched her walk to her car, and something settled inside me. Not rage, resolve. I drove home slowly, sat in the driveway for a long time. The recorder lay in my purse, heavy, full of truth. And that's when I began to think, very carefully. If they were building a case against my mind, I would build a case with facts. Because patience isn't weakness, it's quiet strength. And they had no idea how patient I could be. I didn't confront them. That was the first promise I made to myself. No dramatic scenes, no emotional speeches, no accusations shouted across the kitchen table. I let them believe their version was unfolding exactly as planned. Rachel kept calling. Daniel kept stopping by. And I kept recording. Every correction, every gentle doubt, every carefully placed suggestion that I was slipping. But I also did something else. I called my bank directly. Not the branch down the road, the fraud department. My voice didn't tremble. I'd like a full access log for my account, I said. IP addresses, login timestamps, device history. The woman on the phone was professional, calm. Ma'am, she said after a pause, these logins didn't come from your home network. I closed my eyes. I thought so, I replied quietly. I requested everything in writing. Then I opened a new account. Different bank, different branch, in person. I transferred most of what remained, carefully. I left the original account open. Just enough money to look normal. If they were watching balances, let them watch. Next, I visited an attorney, not the family lawyer. Not anyone whose name my children would recognize. A woman near my age, silver hair, sharp eyes. I didn't dramatize anything. I simply placed the folder on her desk. Bank statements, access logs, transcripts, recordings. She read in silence. Then she looked at me over her glasses. Have they filed yet? Not yet, I said. She nodded slowly. They're building toward guardianship. The word didn't shake me this time. I want to be prepared, I told her. She leaned back in her chair. You're more prepared than most people I meet. For the first time in months, I felt steady. We drafted documents in advance. Affidavits, financial misuse claims, requests for a forensic review. We organized the recordings chronologically. Date, time, context, no drama, just truth. And then I waited. Because the title of this story isn't just something I say for effect. My children said I was losing my mind, so I secretly recorded everything. That sentence became my anchor. Whenever doubt tried to whisper, I returned to it. You are not confused. You are observant. The petition arrived 2 weeks later. Hand delivered. Emergency temporary guardianship. Claims of financial instability, memory decline, unsafe independent living. I didn't cry. I made tea. Sat at my desk. Pressed record. Then I called Rachel. I received something in the mail, I said gently. A pause. Oh, she replied. Mum, we were going to talk to you about that. I'm surprised, I answered. We're doing this for you, she insisted. For me? Yes, you've been slipping. I let the silence stretch, long enough to make her uneasy. We'll sort it out in court, I said calmly. Court. She hadn't expected that word. Daniel called within minutes. Mum, you don't need a lawyer. I already have one. A long pause. You're escalating this. No, I said quietly. I'm responding. He tried to soften his tone. You're proving our point right now. I almost smiled. That line would sound very different under oath. After that, their visits became cautious, polite, measured. Too late. I had months of recordings, bank access logs tied to Daniel's address, transaction trails, written notes, timestamps, and something even more important, control. The night before the hearing, I walked slowly through my house. I touched the dining table where they once asked for power of attorney, ran my fingers along the hallway wall where I'd marked their height. As children, I didn't feel victorious. I felt clear. There's a difference. I slept deeply. In the morning, I wore my navy dress. Simple, respectable, steady. My attorney met me on the courthouse steps. Ready? She asked. I've been ready for weeks, I replied. Inside, the air felt cold. Rachel avoided my eyes. Daniel stared at the floor. They believed they had prepared a case, but as I sat there quietly, I understood something completely. They had built a story. I had built the truth. The stage was set. All I had to do was wait. Courtrooms are quieter than people imagine, not dramatic, not chaotic, just still. The judge adjusted his glasses, looked down at the file, then up at me. Rachel sat straight, tissue in hand. Daniel kept his eyes on the table. Their attorney began first. Your Honor, we believe Mrs. Thompson is experiencing cognitive decline. There have been repeated financial inconsistencies and confusion. Confusion. The word floated gently through the room. I folded my hands in my lap, breathed slowly. Rachel was called to speak. She called me at midnight, she said softly. She forgot she'd paid bills. She accused us of stealing. Her voice trembled in all the right places. Daniel followed. We're just trying to protect her. She doesn't remember conversations clearly. Protect, remember. The words were chosen carefully. Then my attorney stood. Calm, unhurried. Your Honor, we'd like to present documented evidence. She placed a folder on the table, neatly tabbed. Chronological. First, full access logs from the bank. These unauthorized logins originate from Mr. Thompson's residence. Daniel shifted in his seat. Rachel's tissue froze in midair. The judge leaned forward. My attorney continued gently. Next, transaction patterns. Small, recurring withdrawals, structured below reporting thresholds. The judge looked directly at Daniel. Did you access your mother's accounts without permission? Silence, a long one. Finally, Daniel spoke. Yes, but only to make sure everything was safe. Rachel added quickly. We were protecting her. My attorney didn't raise her voice. She pressed play. The recording filled the room. Rachel's voice, steady and private. She's repeating stories. It's getting worse. Click, another recording. Daniel. Once we get control, we can sell before she realizes. The room became very, very still. No shouting, no gasps, just silence. The kind that feels heavy. Rachel's face drained of color. That was taken out of context. My attorney pressed play again. More conversation. Clearer. Undeniable. The judge's tone shifted. This does not indicate cognitive decline, he said. It indicates financial exploitation. The word landed harder than any accusation. Exploitation. Rachel began to cry. Daniel didn't. He stared straight ahead, jaw tight. The judge denied the petition immediately. Guardianship dismissed. Investigation ordered. Protective restrictions put in place. I didn't smile. I didn't sigh in relief. I simply remained seated. After the hearing, they approached me carefully. Mom, Rachel whispered. We thought you were slipping. I looked at her for a long moment. You said I was losing my mind, I replied gently. So I secretly recorded everything. Her shoulders fell. Daniel rubbed his forehead. We were trying to help. I shook my head slowly. No, I said. You were trying to control. That truth didn't need to be loud. It simply needed to exist. Outside the courthouse, the sky was clear. Cool air filled my lungs. My attorney squeezed my arm. You handled that with dignity. Dignity. That mattered more than victory. This wasn't revenge born from fury. It was patience. It was preparation. It was refusing to disappear quietly. That evening, I sat once more at my kitchen table. The same place they had asked for power of attorney. The same place they called me unstable. I folded the court papers neatly, placed them in a drawer, and I updated my will. Not out of spite, out of clarity. Trust must be earned, not assumed. Rachel called later that night. Her voice was smaller. I didn't mean to hurt you. I believed her, partly. But belief doesn't erase damage. I hope you understand something, I said softly. Age does not equal weakness. She didn't answer. She just breathed on the other end of the line. Sometimes the loudest moment in life is when you say nothing at all. And in that silence, I finally felt free. The house feels different now. Not emptier, not louder, just honest. Morning light still spills across the kitchen floor. The coffee still smells like cinnamon. My knees still remind me when I've sat too long, but the air feels clearer. When my children said I was losing my mind, I almost believed them. That's the part no one prepares you for. Gaslighting doesn't begin with shouting. It begins with doubt. Soft corrections, gentle concern, carefully planted hesitation. And if you're not careful, you start questioning yourself. I did, for a while. I checked locks 3 times, reread my own notes, stared at receipts as if they might change. But somewhere inside me, something steadied. I wasn't confused. I was being managed. There's a difference. I don't hate my children. That surprises people. I raised them with love. And somewhere along the way, fear replaced trust. Maybe they were afraid of losing control. Maybe they were afraid of growing older themselves. Fear can disguise itself as protection, but protection without respect is control. I've had time to think about that. Rachel visits now with softer eyes. She asks before opening cabinets. She listens more carefully. Daniel calls before coming over, not because the court ordered it. Because boundaries were set, respect returns slowly, like spring after a long winter. But I also did something quietly important. I placed the small recorder back in my bedside drawer, not because I expect betrayal again, but because I expect wisdom. My children said I was losing my mind, so I secretly recorded everything. And what I uncovered wasn't just proof, it was strength. Strength isn't loud. It doesn't shout in courtrooms or slam doors. Sometimes it's just a woman sitting calmly at her table, refusing to sign a paper. At 68, I've learned something simple. Respect, once lost, can be reclaimed if you wait for the right moment. Peace doesn't come from winning. It comes from knowing you stood steady when the ground tried to shift beneath you. Now, when I sleep, I don't replay accusations. I don't rehearse defenses. I rest. And maybe justice isn't loud or fast. Maybe it's simply closing your eyes at night, without doubt whispering back. If this were you, would you have stayed silent? Tell me in the comments. And if you believe patience is stronger than pride, I'd be honored if you subscribed for more stories like this.